Thank you everybody for coming. You know, you've heard the topics of today. Everything's got fitness. Everything in our life is fitness, in my opinion. It's something that it's a truck on a hill, and you're either pushing the truck up the hill or the truck sliding back. There is no stasis in what we do in life. Anytime there is stasis, that's when things start to decompose, start to go backwards. So social fitness, in my opinion, is just as important as spiritual fitness, as physical fitness, as professional fitness. And we're going to dive a little bit into just kind of some overall topics. We're really going to define what social fitness, what people are defining it as now. We're going to talk about some types of social fitness out there. We're gonna talk a little bit about the phrase being lonely without being alone, because this is a big one that I dealt with for a while. And then, just because we're talking about fitness, overtraining, because that's a big component in the social realm as well. So let's just start with kind of definitions of social fitness. I've looked up a couple of them. One definition is defined as the combined resources a person gets from their social world. It's pretty generalized definition of social fitness. Another one that I'm more of like is our ability to interact and form meaningful relationships with others. So that's where I really sit, of like, okay, I can get behind this spiritual fitness thing. Some types of social fitness are family and community engagements, like sports, volunteer efforts, events with your family, going out to dinner and different things, and cultural inclusiveness, meetups, different things about your background, about the location where you live's background. So what I'm hearing is our social fitness is really construed by who we're around, what we're doing, where we are, and in relation, honestly, with our spiritual fitness and our physical fitness. So I think about the relationships in my life. I think about the relationships that I've had over, we'll just say over the last 3 or 4 years. And to be quite honest, I have been a very lonely person in the last few years, because I have been the meaningful relationships that I have been trying to find are fewer and far between than I think they are. So you guys, most of you, if you follow me on social media or anything, I'm a pretty social person. I get along with everybody. I'm talking with everybody. I'm always going to different places. But does that truly mean that those are meaningful relationships to me or that other person? Sometimes, but most of the time they aren't. And it's more because they can't be, because we're ships passing in the night a lot of the time. And that's something that, you know, I feel a lot of people tend to not look at. Although we're surrounded by people a lot of the times, there is a sense of loneliness. And I come back to this loneliness because as I've read more about depression and anxiety and a lot of the things that we have in our post-traumatic stress realm, I feel that sometimes we get them backwards, where we think that because we are depressed, we are lonely. And in a sense, it's really more on the we are lonely, therefore this is making us depressed. And that was a big correlation for me personally, because I had it backwards for a while. Like, this depression is the reason that I'm not really making any meaningful relationships, or I'm not really connecting with my wife or my kids on a daily basis. And when I really got to the point where, like, wow, I am just really lonely, and this is what's making me depressed, it started to make me really look introspectively on the relationships and the people that I had in my life. And when this started to really come to light, I had a lot of relationships. I was very heavily involved in an organization called F3, which stands for Fitness, Fellowship, Faith. It's a men-only, Christian-based fitness organization. It started in Charlotte. Now it is just blown up all over the world. I mean, we have F3 workouts in Europe and Africa now. I mean, it's just really cool to see where this organization has come from. And in 2012, when my friend, as we call it, emotionally headlocked me to a workout, like, it was what I needed. It was the social fitness that I was missing. It was that community that I really needed to be around. And I dove headfirst into it. And it saved me in a point of time in my life when I just really needed community and people to be around, and I threw everything I had into it. But over time I realized that the majority of the people of the guys that I was working out with, we weren't developing really meaningful relationships. We were showing up at the right time. We were doing these things where we were kind of being there for each other in the gloom, as we called it, in the morning when these workouts. But when we left the workouts, like I couldn't tell you half, people's backgrounds, mostly their real names. It was just this, we were showing up and doing this. And, the workouts are at 5:30 in the morning. And years after doing that, just started to take the toll of waking up super early in the morning, waking up my wife in the morning, that I'm choosing to go here to this workout versus spend time sleeping and resting or something else where I could have been at home. And over the last couple of years, through that introspective look, I just kind of looked at that F3 community as, wow, I'm putting way too much effort into this. And how can I just really start to scale it back and truly harness what I can give F3, but then also what F3 gives me? And this comes back into kind of more of Zach's talk on the spiritual fitness side. Instead of focusing on the fitness, I really started focusing on the faith aspect of it. And we started a small, instead of working out one of the days of the morning, we started doing a Bible study. And that Bible study, it was 7 people, but that's where we started going down the well and started diving into each other and really starting to build those meaningful relationships. And it was with 7 people that, had I just gone to the workouts and talked to them, we wouldn't have made those connections, because we really didn't have much in common other than our desire to deepen our faith in Christ. And that's what kept the stronghold of pulling it in, not being to where I'm trying to please and appease everyone, just really finding, how do I get this smaller kind of community where we can start to learn about each other. And the reason I bring that up is because social media, that's a big thing in our lives. Like, is there anybody in here not on social media? Greg, of course you're not on social media. Do you even have like a birth certificate anymore? We just totally erase you as a human? I mean, that would make total sense. But I mean, we're all on social media. Everybody is. I mean, and we can almost go as far as to say social media is vital. It's crucial to our communication as a society today. Like, we wouldn't, if social media stopped today, there would be more trouble happening within the next 6 months than I think we've ever seen before. Like depression, just the radical disconnect. But does anybody in here really agree that is our true social connection with people? Does social media, is there anybody here social media does it for me as my community? I didn't think so. No. In fact, I've found that it ultimately is this chain sometimes that is preventing us from escalating higher and moving out of where we don't want to be and into where we want to be, because we see these other relationships, we see these people that we can't touch, but they can touch us through their posting, through other people posting on it, and it keeps us in this realm of wherever we were and where we want to be. And it's unfortunate that it's that way, because social media is the reason that I'm standing here today. Had I not reconnected with a ranger buddy in 2013 to tell me to go meet with him in lunch in Raleigh, I would have never talked to him, and then I would have never gone on this TV show down in Costa Rica that I met my wife, and just so many nevers would have happened. And so I don't want to get rid of social media, but how do we use social media to our advantage, or how do we pace ourselves? It almost comes back to alcohol and drugs. How do we pace ourselves on using those drugs? Because social media is a drug. I mean, I find myself pretty addicted to it at times, to the point to where I'll be scrolling on the couch or in the chair, not even knowing it, and then all of a sudden I realize that, and it's as if I've gotten a tarantula in my hand where I'm like, ah, and I just chuck my phone out. It's this this endless need to feel connected and wanted and approved and seen. I think that's a bigger part of it, is seen. Every that we see, every heart that we're on there, that's us being seen. And as it goes like this, it's kind of like blood sugar. We hit these radical spikes and these radical lows, and we're just sending ourselves socially all over the place. And then we go on big social media benders, or fasts where we're going to be like, I'm not touching this for 7 days. I did it in November when I went to Mexico. It was really hard to do. And the only saving grace is that the resort we were on in Mexico was charging like $3.99 for Wi-Fi. So I was like, here's an extra barrier. I don't have to be on social media. And it was like the first time I hadn't checked email in probably 4 years either. That's a good point. Who thinks email is a part of social media? I mean, email is a major way of communication these days, even outside of the professional realm. Think about how many conversations people have in threads of emails. But is that really a physical connection? We try to make it that way, but it isn't. And that feeling of connection, I think this is where it all comes back to, is how connected are we really feeling with the people around us? And when we are connected, our stress is lower, our coping skills are much better, we feel like we have people that we can talk to. And honestly, I feel it's this, we have this invisible safety net, in a sense, that life's just going to be much easier because I know that I have other people with. And it's one of my discussions that I like to have in the realms of post-traumatic stress. I will tell you, I do not have post-traumatic stress. I saw nothing in the military traumatic, hands down. No lies for me. But what I do have and what I do feel is a sense of separation anxiety in times when life is hard for me and routine isn't there, and I think about finances and I think about the schedule and the structure of things, and I get irritated of this. That anxiety is built from, oh gosh, man, I've seen how it can be, and I want it to be that way, but it's not that way. And I feel a lot of veterans might feel and understand themselves a little bit better, kind of looking at it that same way. I think the same as my stepfather, separation anxiety. Worked for VetXpo, Virginia Power, for 35 years. Woke up at 6 every morning, came home at 6 every morning, until he didn't. And then for 5 years, he was just kind of like, what do I do? You know, it's the same with we come out of the military. We've heard it talked about of this fast-paced, in-your-face, go, 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 give me everything, and then get out of here, thanks for your service, you know, kind of thing. Because the mission must go on. So it's this radical, like, dump off, too. So our need to feel connection is really important to us, you know, physically, spiritually, emotionally. It does really crazy things to our bodies. I mean, there's scores that 50% of people that are lonely are likely, people that are lonely are 50% more likely to die early. Like, that's a big thing. So you think, what's going on within us metaphysically when we're feeling lonely, you know, with stress, with depression, weakening immune system. Like, it is crazy how this God-created thing has so much going on in it and can sway one way or the other based on our connection to other human beings. One of my favorite people in the world is a guy named Mccandless. Some of you might know that name. Some of you might have seen the book, read the book, or seen the movie Into the Wild. The guy that went up into the Alaskan wilderness, lived for 180 days, and died. A lot of people think he was an idiot, you know, because he couldn't hack it. I'm not spending 180 days in the Alaskan wilderness. It's probably 30 of it, and I'm getting out of there. But he realized his goal, his dream, much like I hear a lot of veterans, and quite a lot of people actually, was to get away. I want to be away from everybody. I just want to be on my own. And after very quickly he realized happiness is only real when shared. There's got to be other people. There's got to be other people around for me to connect with. So, you know, like I said, when we're lonely, stress is higher, depression is higher, which creates a weakened immune system, and for a lot of people, poor work performance. You know, and that just creates this cycle for everything. It weakens our spiritual fitness. It damages our professional fitness. We stop going to the gym because we're tired, we're over it, you know, and we've got that great plan that Max laid out, but depression and that subconscious mind that is so powerful is just like, slack off today, you're good, you're so good, your abs look the best. You know, and the mirror does its things, tells you what you don't want, you know, tells you what you want to see, and it can be damaged. And it can be damaging. Just like overtraining. And I want to spend time on overtraining. And this is what I was guilty of for a lot of times. I was trying to find so much community that I was damaging the relationships that I already had. Mostly, you know, my wife. My wife's my best friend. And by trying to put myself in these communities and really find and dig in to areas of the community and friends that that weren't digging into me, I was losing time with her, and I was losing our connection and our relationship, which was one of the most important ones to me. And that's, thankfully, I had the chance and the time to really start to think about that and start to dial that back. And big change. And not everybody can do this. A big change that I made was I took the advice of Sergeant Major Mike Hall. Said a long time ago, one of the best things I ever heard him say for outgoing soldiers was, move to where you do the things you do. If you like the beach, don't live in Atlanta. If you like the mountains, don't live in Savannah. Pretty simple. You can find a job at Walmart. You can find a job anywhere else if you're where you want to be. And for the last 2 years, I have been harping and mantraing myself, you're not where you want to be, but you're making the best of where you are right now. And all eyes were forward to moving towards where I wanted to be. And in June, I sold my house in Raleigh. I moved my family into a place that we could fit 4 of our houses into this one room. So it's my wife, my 5-year-old, and me sleeping in a 1-bedroom place on this 90-acre campground that I've been working on. And that's where I wanted to be. And the community has shrunk down that I've been able to start to connect with and build those meaningful relationships. But it took a lot of work, and it took 2 years of really focusing in on what I want to do and how I wanted to do it. And it takes pages right out of Max's book of planning. I had to plan this. I had to manifest this. My wife jokes me all the time. I always say I throw a lot of noodles on the ceiling to see what sticks. And she says that our house is just like a spaghetti factory because I'm constantly throwing them. And after 6 years of marriage, she's finally getting to the point where she realizes like half of what I say is complete shit, and like they're theories in a sense, but those few noodles that stick, they're just the really good ones. And I want to wrap it up with just some things that we should think about in our social fitness, kind of how do we do this better. And I think with anything, the number one thing is self-care. Taking care of ourselves, taking time to know who we are, because knowing who we are allows us to then know how we can interact, how we can provide value to a community, to a group. Because if you've ever read any Enneagram stuff, where there's just all different types of people, and we need different types of people in each community base. And having self-care, having that time to really find out introspectively who you are, you create a better person for whoever's out there. Another big one, as you grow into your communities, as you find them, I have found personally that listening more than talking at these points has been the best thing that I can do for somebody else. Because I've talked a crap ton in my life now, but I've realized there's so many people out there just wanting to talk to somebody, just wanting to be listened to, without on the other end of their story being like, well, let me tell you about my story, and it's really hard for me to do that, where I'll find myself starting to want to relate in my own story, because it's like, oh my gosh, I have the perfect story to tell them. But then I realized that I'm just overshadowing what they just tried to tell me in the moment. And I'll have my time. If this is a meaningful relationship, I'll have my time to bring that up at another point. So then I just say, that really sucks, or thank you for sharing that with me. Is there anything else that you want to do? Or anything else that you want to talk about with me? And in doing and in allowing that space to be there, that comfort, that meaningful relationship continue to grow. Because I've found that people tend to disconnect when they don't feel heard, because that breaks down in that communication and that connection with each other. And communication isn't just verbal. We have a lot of nonverbal communication that we communicate in now, and getting better at verbal and nonverbal communication is really important, and it's a skill. Toastmasters or other things out there are skills that we have to develop. And in my opinion, these are tasks in our skill sets that we have to learn and have to use and do week over week, month over month, and they're the lines that fill the journal. They're the marks and the notes that fill our workout sheets, and they're the things that we can thrive to do better. And I think as I won't say A-type, but as just motivated people, this is just another goal, another objective to work towards. And I find that very comforting for me, that you have a parameter to really work in social fitness, just like you do in physical or professional fitness. There are milestones, I believe, that you can hit. So I hope that just kind of the explanation and just the small talk that we've had about social fitness is kind of giving you an idea, maybe to just kind of look at who are you surrounding yourself with right now? How are you providing influence, whether good or bad, into the communities that you're already connected with? And if it's good, how can I replicate this? How can I teach this? How can I acknowledge this to other people? Or if it's bad, why is it bad? And what do I need to do to either remove myself from that community or figure out how to not do those bad actions or thoughts or content or anything like that? I hope each and every one of you truly feels connected with at least another human being. They honestly say even having one meaningful connection with another person can mean the difference in huge amounts of anxiety and depression versus the other part of it. So I hope each and every one of you at least has that one good, meaningful connection that you can cry with, you can laugh with, you can be angry at, you can just separate yourselves from for years and come back to like it was yesterday. And if you don't have that person, I really hope that you try to find them as soon as possible. Because, like I said, as Chris Mccandless said, in my opinion, happiness is only real when it's shared. So thank you guys for listening to me. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Beautiful. Stay right
Brown
there.
bag. Let me get my...
Oh, you didn't even drink any.
I know, I didn't. Just rolling
Your
on.
gift is here.
Perfect.
I'm wondering if I've ever given you one of the new coins.
I love it.
On the bottom of the GallantFew side, not the Patriot Challenge side, it says self-training and response - ability.
Yep.
That's the star, self-training and response ability. And you just talked significantly about the ability to choose your response, the ability to decide what is good for me and my family, what is good for me personally, spiritually, socially, and then taking action on that so that your life becomes better. It's something that I have admired about you from the day that we met, because you're always constant. Yeah, you throw a lot of noodles up on a ceiling, but you're always looking for things to make things better, not only for yourself but for your community. And I think that is an absolute huge part of social fitness is community. And whether that community is 1 or 2 or 200, being a part of it, being intentional about being a part of it is absolutely huge.
I think so. And bringing up the just intentionality part of it, that was one of the biggest skills that I think I really learned in the military. And in like the smallest, simplest form I can put it at, when in doubt, pull security. It was this like always find something to do kind of thing. And that translated into when you're in the CP and like you didn't want to get messed with, always find something to do, And it's like this improving your position. We always need to improve our position and somehow. And I learned that as long as I can keep improving my position, I can make it better for myself, but then hopefully in the same effect, I can make it better for those coming along too. So thank you, military, for teaching me at least one thing.
One of the other things that I think is important about social fitness is it's tied to the Spartan Pledge, but it's the other person. It's that. Last night at the two-step, I talked briefly about my best friend that I grew up with going through a hard time, but I took offense at him going through a hard time thinking I had done something to offend him, not recognizing that the pain was all his. And now I was further kind of shutting him off by not sensing that pain. You talked about empathy earlier.
Yeah.
I think it's huge for us to think about who is in our circle and those that we have not been talking to much. And now it's your responsibility to reach out to them, not their responsibility to reach out to you. Right?
Very much so.
When I cycle around Trophy Club, I'm on my bicycle, I see another cyclist coming towards me, and I'm like, hey, you're a cyclist, and they just go by and don't even wave. my first inclination is, what a jerk. He didn't even wave back at me, right? But so why was I waving at him? Was I waving so that I would get validation back? Or was I waving that that person would have a great day so that their day would be better?
Yeah.
And when we switch that to the latter, I think it makes our emotional health that much better, our emotional fitness that much better.
100%.
Anybody have a question or two for Bryce before we're done with Bryce?
Yes, sir.
Patrick?
You really struck a chord on a number of things you said. Because I deal a lot with veterans in another life, which Carl's familiar with.
Yeah.
And I just can't help but notice the existence of what I call social anxiety on so many veterans. Don't get me wrong, there's 10 or 20% that are comedians.
Yeah.
But there's a huge percentage of veterans, and I'm older than the average veteran, so
Don't look a day over 29.
but I just see so many younger guys and gals in their 30s and the 40s. They're afraid to engage, and they're kind of unusually quiet, and they've gone through some experiences,
Sure.
like us all. And I think the veteran community has even more challenges based on their past experience, combat or whatever it is, and a lot of the things that you mentioned are hopefully they can embrace and
For sure.
help them go forward.
I didn't spend too much time on the toxic social fitness aspect of things, but in my opinion, there's a large realm of toxicity within the veteran culture for us. And I talk about it in this ball and chain effect, where I have experienced people that have made up or embellished stories of trauma in combat so they felt relevant. Because there's this overarching thing now that we've been in combat for so long, and we put so much emphasis on the special operations and a lot of the field work that's happening in the military, that if you didn't do any of that, you didn't do shit. And so now you have a ton of people like, how do I feel relevant next to this guy who just so happens to be from the 75th Ranger Regiment, but from the skin, he doesn't know that I didn't do shit over there. In my little time of existence, I didn't fire around. Thank goodness I didn't have to do that. But there is this thought that they need to like prove themselves from this past, and we don't help ourselves by having this thing like Veteran TV is this complete YouTube channel about all the dark humor that people used overseas. That was for overseas. That wasn't to come back here and for us to keep using. And they sit in it and they melt and they just swell in this toxicity, and then I hear them talking about civilians don't get me. And then I ask them, well, do they not get the fact that you're using a bunch of vulgar humor and talking about death and they just don't want to do it? And the veteran kind of looks at me like, well, yeah, that's why. Why don't they get it? And I'm like, because I don't want to hear that crap either. And it really strikes a chord that, oh, wow, maybe I'm not fulfilling my deal in the community engagement here with other people. And I just briefly come back to the F3 thing. There was not a single veteran when I started F3 in there. And it really like, oh, why aren't there any veterans in this group? But after a while, I was like, there's no veterans in this group. It was awesome because I got so much different perspective out of life out of those. And that has helped me now come back and use that same feedback that I was using on myself to these younger veterans that come with these kind of toxic thoughts. And I mean, to say there are the very sporadic ones that we really need to dive into. But we need to make it okay for the truck driver or the clerk or the cook or anybody that served our country that you did your part. And it goes along with a whole other social structure that, because you work at McDonald's, you're an inferior person in this society. I'm sorry, but if you work at McDonald's, you are a part of the driving engine around America that keeps us going. So you should be proud of where you are. And I wish we had a better thought process of that, because they think if I'm not working at IBM or Hewlett-Packard or anybody else, I'm a nobody. And I just don't believe that. We all serve a purpose on this earth, and we just need to embrace it and kind of feel how we are in it. But I appreciate your continued diligence to kind of sit and be with those veterans in that capacity, because it helps.